Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Multifamily Forward, presented by Mark Taylor Residential. I am Adam Greco, and as always, to my left, it is such a pleasure to be next to our president, Mr. John Carlson. How are you, John?
Great to be here. Thank you, Adam.
And we have a pretty good topic for today, and a very special guest speaker. We're talking about knowing the essentials of the landlord-tenant law. John, just to ask a couple questions before we bring in our special guest. Let's talk about the responsibility of knowing the essentials of the landlord-tenant law and how it helps us in multifamily.
Yeah, certainly. I'm an active broker, of course, in both the state of Nevada and Arizona, and it's imperative that we as an operation know thoroughly what's happening from a law and legal perspective. So I think, our gentleman that we'll be introducing in a few minutes, Mr. Zinman, certainly has helped us craft, I'll say, our supportive narrative in terms of how we operate. And I think having the right policies and procedures in place,
of course,
and ensuring that our employees, our staff are constantly trained and updated with the most updated versions of anything that changes. We know it's very fluid in this marketplace. So really important that we stay up to date and that we activate our policies and procedures correctly.
And I have to assume just the importance of staying continuously informed is not only to protect ourselves, but also our residents.
Absolutely. Residents are first in mind, and they obviously have obligations as well as tenants, and we want to ensure that there's constant communication and an understanding of the law.
Love it. I think it's time to bring him in.
Bring in the real guy.
Let's bring in the heavy hitter. Without further ado, we'd love to present Mr. Mark Zinman from Zona Law. It's an absolute pleasure having you here with us, Mr. Zinman. It's been a long time. I don't see you on the golf course very often, right? That's not a common thread as an attorney?
No, not at all. That's not what I'm here for.
Okay, well, good. How about we ask a couple questions just so the viewership gets to know you a little bit, if you're comfortable with that.
Please.
Put you on the spot?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So,
dress nicely. That's all that matters to me.
All right, good. If you were not an attorney, what would be your preferred job, your preferred career?
Oh, preferred. That's a tough one. I don't know. I think I'm so far down this rabbit hole. It's a hard thing to imagine. Originally, when I went to school, I was supposed to be a doctor. So I would assume that's my default to go back to. But that's an entirely different world. I can't even imagine.
So instead of Esquire at the end of your name, it'd say MD.
Exactly.
That's fitting.
It sounds good.
That's fitting. I like that. And if you had to choose one meal that you had to eat every single night for the rest of your life, what would that be? Can I take a guess?
Sure, let's hear it.
I'm thinking it's going to be some type of pasta dish.
I'm going to go with poke bowl.
See, that's how I know John's good at this game.
He knows you better.
John is very good at this. For your purposes, I was going to say Guido's the restaurant, but no.
Yeah, nice.
John knows me well. So.
Nice choice. And one last question, if you don't mind. So what is one thing about you that people would find interesting that maybe they don't know already?
That is a tough one. So I got to assume everyone assumes cautious attorney.
Yes.
Thinks everything.
We've heard you in board meetings too. Yes.
Sorry, it's a little dry. What can I say?
Yes.
And twice in my life, I've gone skydiving. Neither one in a safe place. Once I went in Czech Republic, and once I went in Marana. And the only reason we went Marana, we literally found the cheapest skydiving we could, which is a really bad way to pick your skydiving.
How long did it take you to sign off on both times?
Both times I was an idiot. I just literally signed the paper, don't even read it. It's just like, you gotta do it.
So you are human. Is basically
exactly.
what it came. Good for you.
When it comes to business, totally different mindset.
So our topic again, knowing the essentials of landlord-tenant law within multifamily. This is actually going to be a question for both of you, if you don't mind. So, as a multifamily owner, investor, manager, give me top 3 to 5 staples of landlord-tenant law that everyone should absolutely know. I'm going to start with you, Mark. Sorry.
Start with the expert.
I was going to defer to John there. I even teach a class on this, and I look at like the most common mistakes. And so I kind of pull things from that as like, what do I see managers making the most mistakes of, and where's the highest liability? And from that's kind of figure out, okay, well, this is what we need to know.
Right.
So right off the bat, the thing that always comes to my mind is security deposit disposition, right? It is such an easy thing to do, but there's so many check boxes that you have to go through. And a lot of people don't realize that that's the most common lawsuit a tenant files. Because here in Arizona, tenant gets 3 times their damages for the amount wrongfully withheld. So from a tenant's perspective, why wouldn't they file that lawsuit,
Right.
right? So it's such a common thing that we see so much, but it's an easy thing to be proactive as the manager to know the steps, to follow them, take pictures, keep your invoices, prorate, those kind of things that save the company, it save ownership, just a lot of litigation and hassle.
Good point.
So
Anything additional?
beyond so that's one. We'll call that one.
Okay.
That obviously falls under the Landlord Tenant Act, that side. Number two, the biggest, I think, out there right now is fair housing issues. I think managers have to have a good understanding of it. And like when I teach fair housing, my teaching to clients always is, look, just be aware of these issues. All I want the manager to do is to be able to realize, oh, that is a fair housing issue. There's so many nuances with fair housing. I don't expect all the managers to know every single answer. Like, this is an assistance animal, I have to allow it. I have to do this, I have to do that. Just realize, oh, it's a fair housing issue. Let me talk to corporate. Let me talk to my attorney and get back to you. So it's that issue spotting, I think, is critical for managers to be able to do.
And not to cut you off there, but that's a perfect segue to ask John, because as operationally through Mark Taylor, it is something that we continuously train on in-house through training and development.
Yeah,
right?
no question. Meaning we want to ensure that, we're constantly updating our teams. You have new managers, you have new employees every week. We want to make sure that we're in compliance as always. And I think Mark hit it on the head. There's certain fundamentals or things that we do on a monthly basis over and over and over again. And we want to eliminate any liabilities, of course. And as always, handling money is a big deal.
Right.
Not only for our tenants, but also our clients. So making sure that we have a strong accounting team that understands the nuances of security deposits, paying out on time, all of those things are imperative to our success.
Perfect. Mark, flipping it back to you. So we've got security deposits and we've got fair housing.
Yeah. Top two. I mean, there's a plethora, I think, of things that are big issues that people have to realize is how you get possession back. Like Arizona, I can tell you right off the bat, there's 3 ways to get possession, right? You have an eviction, you go through the abandonment process, or tenant turns in keys.
Right.
And those are, each one has like a specific procedure to follow. But I see so many people that get into this business that just go in and take possession back. Like they think the person left in the middle of the night and they're like, oh, they're gone, I can take possession. Or I got an eviction judgment, but they didn't wait for the writ of restitution.
Which isn't the case.
Yeah. Like you have to know each single step to follow.
That's great.
The good thing about Arizona is like the law has laid out what we have to do. It's just you have to know that it exists and check that.
I love it. John, anything to add on that?
I just think, the notice process. So, understanding, and as Mark said, it's very specific and laid out perfectly. You just have to follow the law. So when do you notice, a 5-day? When can you notice to cure? All of those things should be very obvious to an MCO and I'll say leadership, so that those processes are happening the correct way fundamentally each month. And it's a short window. Right. So, you have to do those things right and accurate and on time.
Love it.
I will piggyback on that because
Please do.
John kind of touched on that. I will tell you, one of the most important things, especially new managers and people getting into this business, is service of notice, like John's talking about.
Yeah.
Hand deliver certified mail. That's it. That is like valid notice for every single notice that you're going to serve to a tenant. Those are the two. And it seems like everyone just kind of defaults, I can post it on the door. That's good. Or I can send it out email. It's just basic laws.
Not the case.
Those are the 2 ways just to get things done.
So, Mark, there's a number of new investors, builders, developers that are coming into our market. I'll give an example. Let's say some of the single-family home builders. BTR and SFR has become very popular and is here to stay, of course. It's bringing a lot of attraction. But those single-family home builders have never been in our industry before as far as renting. Where would you guide them to start in making sure they understand landlord-tenant law?
Yeah, I mean, incredible. I mean, obviously we're ground zero for that industry right now, but they have never had the operational side of it. I mean, my answer, and it's not a sales pitch for you guys, the reality is you guys, right? The professional property management. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, but you need to get up to speed immediately to know how to actually rent out properties, manage properties, onboarding residents, all of these things that you guys do every day that there's new people coming into the industry, they have no idea.
Yeah.
The worst mistakes I ever see, and not even just in the multifamily space, in the single family space, is people thinking they know what they're doing and just making it up as they go, whether it's not using a proper lease or just proper procedures, and they just do not handle things properly. So you're better off going to a proper management company that knows what they've been doing.
Not good for our industry as a whole.
Exactly.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, I think for us, if we look at our our consulting playbook.
Right.
Really by design, we're bringing these groups in and hand-holding some of them that maybe don't have any expertise in this specific area. We have the blueprints, we have the playbooks. So understanding how to deliver that to them and helping them, really guide them along the way.
Right.
I wouldn't even say it's necessary to go, full legalese and get into Zona Law during that time frame, but
Right.
clearly we know what to do start to finish. And, if we do need more extra advice or they want to learn more,
We have the
obviously
support from our
we'll,
expertise.
we'll turn
Yeah.
the chair to Zona, but that's what we do every day. So I think Mark's right in saying professional management matters. Avoid those big liabilities by choosing us.
Love it. Great answers. Let's talk about today's landscape compared to what it was like about 3 years ago. And I'm referring to the great pandemic because,
We're still talking about that?
yeah, unfortunately, sorry. It's a good topic sometimes.
That's not going anywhere. That's the
No,
landscape
it's
has
not.
changed.
Yeah. So knowing that the entire world changed, let's talk specific to our world, multifamily, and of course, landlord tenant law. What was significantly affected during that time, during the pandemic, from your viewpoint?
Well, yeah, I mean, the most obvious being obviously the eviction moratorium.
That's big.
We've never even seen a concept like that, right?
Right.
The idea that you own a piece of property and someone could live there, not pay you rent, and there's nothing you can do is
No recourse.
mind-blowing to me. Even in hindsight, it's mind-blowing with all the lawsuits that never really got anywhere, any traction with that. But I think the bigger thing out of the pandemic, and that's going to kind of keep us on our toes for years to come, is the involvement of the federal government and the amount of eyes that are now on this industry that have never been there before.
We're going to ask you a couple questions on the federal government as well here.
Perfect. And I think on that side is a big change, and then also the amount of PR. I think managers have to be more cognizant. It's not necessarily just the legal issues. You have PR issues. Everybody's online with everything. Everything you do is blown out to a bigger
Right.
proportion than it ever has been. And so you have to have that mindset in the back, like, yes, this is the legal answer. Is this also the good PR answer as well?
So for you specifically, along with all of the other great attorneys that are within our industry, what was it like having to present a case via Zoom or Teams for a long extended period of time like you did?
Yeah, and I will admit I was actually wrong in this one. So everyone went virtual immediately, right? Every single court, family
Yeah.
court, divorce, criminal, everything. Unfortunately, our industry, we realized after that it worked out really well. And so we actually passed a law to allow that to continue on.
So there's a benefit.
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
I mean, we've
Good.
actually seen more tenants show up to evictions than ever before, which is great. Like, I'm a big advocate for that, because if tenants can show up, most of the time it's not an issue, right?
They
Like,
have
I
a
know I
voice.
didn't pay the
Right.
rent, but they have to learn their rights. And so the judge walks them through it, and that's it, which I think is great.
That's good.
Yeah,
Well, there's
absolutely.
a benefit. John, same question. I mean, what was the biggest change for us as far as operationally from a manager's or owner's viewpoint?
Yeah, I think the unprecedented attack on property rights from the federal government, it was really a time that we had to sit back and really understand what they're capable of. And, defending our industry long-term matters. And as Mark said, he said it well, a lot of eyes from the federal side are on our industry. And, I feel like we're constantly under attack, even though we're just trying to provide housing. So, there's a PR component to it. It's how we communicate what we do. It's supporting ourselves. It's fundraising. It's ensuring that, we have a voice at the table.
Right.
So they understand what we're doing. It's easy to attack something that you don't really know or understand. So I think, that's the long-term play for us, is we really have to be proactive and defend ourselves. We participate a great deal with our Better Government Fund with the AMA. And obviously, we're focused with AMAPAC and NMHC and all of the groups that are pro apartments or pro multifamily. And on a long-term basis, we just have to make sure that we're positioning ourselves the right way from a PR perspective.
Right. And I think you both would agree when we say protect us, we're not just talking about us, the big bad landlord or the industry. We're also talking about our residents, because it affects our residents as well. Correct?
Everybody.
Good. Okay. Perfect. Here's where we're going to dig into a little bit on government getting involved and how it's changing a little bit of our industry. Let's discuss source of income, because that was initially passed in Tucson. It was overruled, and then correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're
Please
doing great.
use the
This
right.
is amazing so far.
Yeah, okay, good. You didn't know I had a little bit of a law background.
I'm kind
did
of
you?
impressed right now.
Okay. Well, it's just the source of income. Let's dive in.
Sure. So source of income, exactly. I guess that's the best way to start, is that when taking in applications or renting to somebody, you can no longer effectively care where their money comes from. Most people just liken it to Section 8. You have to now accept Section 8. But it goes beyond that. It goes into rental assistance, alimony, all these other ways where people get trusts, inheritance,
Right.
all of these ways that somebody gets their money in on a monthly basis. You no longer can discriminate. You have to accept that money, assuming it comes in, which, again, the biggest one is Section 8. If somebody's a Section 8 resident, it used to be, say, you know what, we don't want to participate in the program. There's so many extra hurdles. You have to sign a HUD lease. You have to do all these different things. Now you have to participate in the program and go through all those extra hurdles. And so people are dealing with the program that they've never dealt with before. And kind of going back to what you're saying is now they're effectively partners with the federal government as well.
Because how has this affected managers, owners? And I mean, has there been something that is it just more of learning the new process?
Yes. I mean, it's definitely a shock to the system. It's
Right.
starting over
Okay.
with a whole other set of laws, realizing, because you guys have done an excellent job of setting forth your procedure of onboarding a resident, for example, right?
Thank you.
Going through the background check, getting the money, whatever deposits up front, and then following that. Well, that sounds great. But with Section 8, for example, the city has to come in and inspect the unit before they'll allow the person to actually sign a lease. So now you're stuck on hold until the city can come out. Now the cities have gotten better, which is good, but it's a give and take in terms of what you guys are used to and changing the business model. And it is a change. I mean, there's no question.
And this is something that we lobby for constantly each and every year when we meet with our lawmakers in DC and locally as well. And I think they're still amazed just by looking at their facial, responses when we tell them that we have severe delays on that inspection process or even receiving money for those vouchers.
Yeah, we've had constant issues. It's funny because the city council, for example, Phoenix passed this really quickly. But their
it was
actual office
overnight.
didn't know how to handle it. And so we keep bringing up issues being like, okay, well, they wanted, for example, a property management agreement, like your agreement with the owner. Well, that's confidential to your company. That's
would
not
think.
something you would give out because obviously your competitors would love to see that.
Yeah.
We're like, that's not going to work. We can give a contract, just a acknowledgement instead. And it's those things you're constantly pushing back when you have the change this quickly without all the steps thought through.
For both of you, this question, any other noteworthy changes that we've seen as of recent that we should discuss?
I think there's ample, I'll say, information out there from the federal government describing what they want to do. So as Mark said, we're in the crosshairs. There was just another report last week that was released stating that rent control is something that is good for this environment for tenants as a whole. We know that has been proven wrong over and over and over again. But nonetheless, that's still a conversation for today. And, the state of Arizona has a preemption against rent control. However, politics matter, elections matter. So we potentially could have a fully controlled Democratic House and Senate along with a Democratic governor next year, which puts us at risk. Rent control could be pushed through.
Yeah. Not that we're picking sides as far as which side of the aisle you are, of course, but how far back does that preemption date? Was it the 50s?
No, I think it was the 80s.
80s, I believe.
80s? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see how much I know. I don't know
You're doing
as
great
much
so
as
far, though, on the
Thank
legal
you.
side.
Just
Thank
pick a
you.
decade. Yeah.
Just pick a decade. So, Mark, any noteworthy changes?
No, I think that's the biggest one of what's coming on, and what John is touching on as well is that the president, the White House, all the executive branches are putting out these concepts of what they would like to see. And if you remember back to like fourth grade of how our government works, you have, the executive, you have the legislative, and you have the judiciary. They
Right.
kind of each have different functions. The president's office, the White House, is not supposed to put out laws. They're supposed to enforce them. The legislature does. And what we're seeing now is the White House putting out what they would like to see: concepts of rent control, late caps on late fees, how you're handling all your admin onboarding. Now, that doesn't change the law, but what that does is get more news coverage, more eyes, and then more pressure on the local level to do the same.
Right.
And that's why, like John's saying, in 2024, it's a big election because our state could change entirely. And that's the narrative that we're hearing is very much, unfortunately, very anti-landlord.
And I'll add, just since the pandemic, every year. And the reason I say the Democrats is that the Democrats are proposing rent control
Right.
in the state House and
True.
Senate. It's not being pushed through because they don't have control of their committees. But nonetheless, those those items are being talked about every year. So my concern is if it does shift, that we have to, we'll have to deal with that at a different level.
We've talked about this just in normal conversation. Many of our lawmakers are small business owners themselves, correct? It'd be interesting to pose the question to them. Could you imagine if the federal government or even local government had a say in what you could charge for whatever you're producing out of your small business that you own and operate? Be interesting to see what kind of reaction it would be, just in comparison.
It goes back to me to even with the eviction moratorium, at the same way I look at it the same, is that if you compare our industry, the multifamily, the rental industry, with the grocery stores, right?
Perfect.
You don't have the federal government coming in that respect and saying it, but there's an appeal for some reason on the mass of saying rent control works, where obviously every financial analyst has looked and says there's significant problems with it. But same when you go back to the eviction moratorium, they stopped it.
Yeah.
You didn't see the same thing with grocery stores saying, hey, you have to give out your food, but with landlords, it was, you have to keep your doors open even if the person's not paying the rent. And so it is an interesting concept where government comes in and really deprives you of your property rights.
Well, we're glad that you're leading the charge for us, so
I think
let's make it
you
happen.
guys do it honestly. I mean, I think people always ask me, oh, why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? I mean, companies need to step up, and that's all it is like John gets involved. You obviously get involved with the AMAPAC and different organizations to either testify, bring money, or just be an activist, a face for the industry, because that's what we need.
Just need to continue having a voice, right? Making sure we're being heard. Perfect. Gentlemen, I got one last question for you both. And again, it can go either way here. So as a owner, manager, operator, investor, even so, where do you, and this is for you, John, where do you start with compliance assurance?
Well, that's been, I'll say, years in the making. So,
Yeah.
Obviously going back to, I know it's an exciting topic, but policies and procedures,
Yeah.
but also ensuring that our training and development team has the right tools to support that process. And then secondarily, and most importantly, partnering with great law firms like Zona Law to ensure that, when we get into situations where there is perhaps some gray area, some areas where we need actual legal expertise, that we have them to lean on, and they're there for us in a moment's notice. So, I think partnering with them, but ensuring that we're as proactive as possible to eliminate those whammies, those liabilities, those
Right.
concerns, matters a great deal.
Great. Mark?
I mean, being proactive is the greatest thing I've ever heard as an attorney. It just makes me happy every time, because so many things can happen on a property, right? It is amazing to me when I got into this industry. You see anything that can happen, there's that many people, eventually it's going to happen on your property. And if you can be proactive, have written policies to address it, it makes life so much easier, because it takes the stress off your on-site team, and it ensures consistency across an entire portfolio. So yeah, I mean, I think trade organizations to get the basic information, law firms to figure it out. And then I think management companies. I think a lot of people own properties and don't know any of the laws. And
Right.
That's obviously what you guys are here for, is that you're a great conduit to figure out, okay, I need to be up on what's going on. I mean, you guys have existed for years. That you're bringing that wealth of knowledge to every single owner. And so that's where they get a head start, right, just from partnering with you guys. Same as how hopefully we partner.
I'm gonna chime in with one last question here, because it kind of rolls right into this. So we were talking about the effects of what the pandemic did to us, not only from your viewpoint, but from ours operationally. And you saying how excited you were about being proactive. Was it fair to say that the pandemic forced you to be a little bit more proactive as far as your services being what you offer to your client base, your website?
I mean, I would say, if anything, out of the pandemic in that respect, I would be the podcast more than anything else, which seems ridiculous, because why would you want to listen to a legal podcast? But things were changing so much. We were like,
I'm a subscriber.
there you go. See?
So am I.
Now we just got to turn those into paid subscribers, and I'm set. Retirement's there.
There we go.
No, it was literally a concept somebody brought to me, and they're like, why don't you do a podcast? And I'm like, why would you ever want to watch a legal podcast? But then with the CARES Act, the Governor's Ducey's executive order, all these different eviction moratoriums coming out, and I was like, managers were unbelievably stressed with all the change.
Yeah.
They're not going to want to read newsletters. So we figured, podcast might actually work. And then we've always been much more technologically advanced. We always push the envelope of what we can do. just to make your manager's jobs easier. And I think a part of that came out really during the pandemic as well, because you don't have the face-to-face as much. Everything has to be seamless online, and we tried to do that as well.
Well, you do a great job on it. I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out as well.
Thank you.
Also wanted to say thank you. Well, one, of course, for joining us today, but two, your leadership and insight on the executive board through the AMA, the Arizona Multi-Housing Association. We have to constantly remind ourselves to define every acronym that we use. So I apologize that we didn't define that earlier in the show, but thank you again for all the leadership, because we couldn't do it without you, man.
No, thank you so much. I mean, honestly, I've joked to you about this plenty of times. I basically just followed in your footsteps of whatever direction. I mean, Adam's been the face of the industry for years. So I'm like, if Adam's doing it, it's got to be the right direction. And I just follow him. And thankfully now we're on the exec board together, which is awesome.
It's all in disguise.
And we're basically all in John's footsteps anyway. So.
Exactly. John, how would you like to close this out for us today?
Well, I guess I have one question for you, potentially. This is off script, but more just conversational. I'm curious if there was any remarkable case or story that occurred from the pandemic through today that just was something that you had never seen before, or just it blew you away, like this actually happened, or this resident got away with this, or this management team did this, or whatever it might be.
Sure. And I don't know why. It's not pandemic related. I don't know why.
And don't define the management team, please.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
XYZ.
I mean, like I said before, you have that many people in apartments, rentals across the state. And so I kind of just see everything, right? The good news is you guys see good residents and bad residents. Generally, when it comes across my desk, it's just the bad resident. It's that smaller percent.
Yeah.
So I see everything. One of the most statistically amazing things I ever saw, unfortunately, is a lot of times there's guns shootings in properties, right? Everyone says they're cleaning their gun, goes off, shooting. And we dealt with that a lot. You have to evict because of the liability there for the property owner. If the person stays and they shoot a gun again, you're going to get sued and there's liability for it.
Right.
So statistically, one of the most amazing things I ever saw, the manager called me and said, we had a flood upstairs, flooded the downstairs. Could we do an immediate eviction? And I go, I don't know why you would. It's just a flood. Like what happened with the pipe? And they're like, that's a problem. And they're like, well, turns out the pipe burst and flooded the unit. I was like, again, still not following what the problem is at all. Turns out what actually happened was downstairs person cleaning their gun, discharged it, went through a wall, went through another wall, which happens again.
Yeah.
But managed to hit the water pipe, which is probably like this big. Hit the water pipe, caused the flooding, and then flooded every single floor below them.
Oh, boy.
So the chance of hitting a pipe that's like that big, to me, was statistically incredible.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
those kind of things, eventually
better when
it'll happen.
They complete the full story to you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Give us some more detail, yeah.
I always try and pull out information from managers.
Well, I think you made a valid point, too. I mean, we know most of our residents are good acting residents, just
Absolutely.
like most landlords, right? There's a small percentage that aren't. So, we wouldn't be in business without those great residents, which is, always helpful for us. And I think that would be my gratitude for today, my 35,000 residents. I'm grateful for them choosing Mark Taylor as a home.
Well, I think in that respect, people don't realize this. When you go into a business as an owner, as a property manager, that is your business partner for a year, right? That's why I think,
not longer.
I'm an attorney. I'm like crucial on like leases and writing things out properly because that's your business plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, we're partners together. I'm going to provide the property. You pay the rent, and these are all great amenities. We work together, and that's what controls. And so the other thing, going back to our earlier conversation, is leases control everything, and they're critical.
Perfect. Well, John kind of already answered the final question, and that question, to be specific,
I did
toss
jump
it
ahead.
to
I'm
you.
sorry.
No, that's okay. That's
He can
you're
see
keeping
it.
me on my toes.
He sees it coming.
John spoke to what he's grateful for today, and of course, that's our 35,000 plus residents. What are you grateful for today?
You both know my wife. So
Yes.
obviously I've got to give a shout out to my wife, Tink. Otherwise,
Yes.
nothing good comes out
Love
of
you, Jana.
the rest of the discussion. Honestly, though, I love my wife, so we'll leave that as a full answer. I'm truly honored to be here sitting with you guys. Like, jokes aside, I love you both. You're amazing friends. It's amazing to be able to work on a high level with people that have that same goal of what they want to be. It's like you want to be the best in the industry of what you do and provide the best level of service you can. And I feel like we do that. We try and do that on a day-to-day basis. I know you guys try and do that. And so it's amazing to be able to sit here down and do this with you guys and kind of look forward to what this industry is going to be like.
I'm gonna.
What do you got, Adam?
I'm going to do the same thing I did last time with our other special guest, Mark. I'm going to tell you that you're much more handsome than our last special guest, and I'll fill you in.
You're
on
not going
that
to tell me
one.
who it was, though.
No, not right now, but I'll fill you in later. But just where you were going with that, as far as being grateful, sitting next to not only our friends, but coming up in this industry over 25 years, you have a certain number of mentors, leaders that are willing to help guide you along. And both of you have been two of the top in my career. So I wanted to say thank you for that. So really, really appreciate that. Mark Zinman, Zona Law, thank you again for the time that you spent with us today.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Another episode of Multifamily Forward presented by Mark Taylor Residential. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.